By the way, Ramzi, you're
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to our listeners across the globe. This is In12D Live, Season 2, Episode 12, with my co-host Suzi von from Ireland. And we have a great magician on stage. Can't wait to start the conversation, David Harker. David, welcome to our show again.
Hi, thank you for having me back. It's been a long time.
Well, we debated, but then we said it's okay.
It's really cool to have you back, David. And I'm really hoping that, people can go back to, Season 1, Episode 3, if they want to get the full backstory. And hopefully today we can jump in and go a bit deeper, because as we've put in the title, David has gone from being a magician, a mystic, remote viewer, and obviously the co-host of the Psychic Guys, and he's also a moderator for one of the largest online communities of remote viewers. So, David, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Great to be here again. So, what would we like to discuss this evening or this morning?
It's what we would like to discuss. First of all, let's just remind our viewers, how did you become a remote viewer?
Whatever this is. Well, I had a good question. I had like a totally spontaneous spiritual awakening, and I think it was the end of 2018, and I was a complete normie before then. I was a software engineer. I never paid any attention to psychic events or consciousness or any of that woo-woo stuff. I was just like, nah. Never gave it any thought. I just assumed that can't be real, so I won't think about it. I don't, if people are into that, they must be wrong. And so I'd never examined the topic. And then had this awakening event, which I think it may have been something like a cessation. The Zen koans, where you are supposed to like study the impossible riddle, and eventually it crashes the computer of your intellect. It kind of just, the whole thing shuts down and reboots. And in the little gap there, you kind of get an experience of unbounded consciousness, kind of unfiltered by the intellect. It's just like this tiny little gap, and that's what it was for me. But I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't a regular meditator. I had no spiritual background. I wasn't trying to achieve this. I didn't know it was a thing. I wouldn't have believed you if you told me it was a thing. I wouldn't have, it was just like out of the blue, because I was contemplating some like mundane problems about investments and geopolitics and stuff. And they were also, it turns out, impossible questions, just like a Zen koan. And I kind of realized that my models of understanding that I had of the world, I thought I knew how the world works, or I had that assumption that I knew roughly how it worked. And I realized, wait, I don't know how anything works. I can't make any predictions. I do not understand this at all. And my intellect, my ego just gave up. It was just like, I quit. Fine. And in that moment, I had this kind of cessation thing. And it's very hard to describe, because everything changed. My perception changed, but actually nothing changed at the same time. Things didn't look visually any different. There was no chorus of angels or trumpets coming down from heaven or anything, but it was a very profound sort of something had happened. And I knew I couldn't put the cat back in the bag, that I would have to investigate this, and but not what it was. And that this was like Christmas Eve, and I had dinner to cook and everything the next day. So I was like, well, we're going to have to put this on the back burner, but I know that I can't just ignore this. This is something as big as just happened. I don't know what. So that sent me down a rabbit hole of like all of I knew that I was wrong about something, right? I knew I'd missed something, or I'd written something off as false that was true. And so I had to kind of look back through all of the crazy internet rabbit holes and conspiracy theories and weird ideas which I'd dismissed, and try and test them all again and go back through it and go, could this one be true? Could that one be true? And when you're first in that territory, as somebody who's just been thrown into the realm of spiritual development. There's lots of people who want to take $600 from you to come to a seminar or buy a magic amulet or a special helmet that's going to give you all the answers. You know, oh, you can go and do ayahuasca, or you can come to my retreat or whatever. And you think, yeah, really, if I tried out all you guys, I would run out of money very quickly. So what I need is a experiment that I can run myself for free or for very cheap. You know, this should be testable. I should be able to be empirical about this and do an experiment to validate some claims about, any claims about the universe being otherwise than I currently think wrongly that it is. Eventually, YouTube recommended, because I was watching some crazy conspiracy theory wacko videos, just trying to pour through as much material as I could to try and find a thread to pull on. And eventually, it recommended me Russell Targ's remote viewing TED Talk, which it says banned TED Talk. It wasn't actually banned, it's clickbait, but talk. And I thought I resisted watching it because I thought, nah, that's crazy. That can't be true. And eventually I watched it and was like, really? This can't be real. But because I told myself I want to be empirical, I thought, well, I can be empirical about this, right? This is literally a laboratory protocol for testing psychic functioning. So I can just test it myself. So I searched the internet for remote viewing targets and I found one, got the coordinate number, and I got a post-it note, literally just one of these guys, not even a big post-it note, and scribbled some lines down. And then I opened the target up to get my feedback. And actually what I'd scribbled on the post-it note matched it really well. And I was like, ooh, I was not expecting that, because I was expecting it not to work. And then I would get to feel like I was so clever because I understood how the universe worked and I knew that this was impossible. And I tried it and it worked. So it was a real challenge to my worldview. And I had to do 50 more targets before I could really believe what I was doing, right? I was doing something which I believed to be impossible, and at the same time I was doing it. So it was a weird time.
I'd love to ask you. Sorry, I didn't. I thought you were taking a breath. I thought you were finished your sentence. Finish it, please.
Yeah, no, I think I am. Excuse me, the phone's ringing here. It would ring. Nobody ever calls that phone, and they would today. Where's my camera gone? Hey, camera, come back. There we go. Right, there we go. Sorry about that.
So
that's very condensed.
It's just a wild introduction to such a huge subject. So I can't even imagine what that must have been like for you. But I want to know, would you just back up another little bit? And because when I was reading through your bio again, have you always been a bit of a magician? You know, I was having visions of you as a 10 or 12-year-old boy with,
no.
This is
not stage magic. I'm talking about ritual ceremonial magic, the Western mystery tradition, not
card tricks. But were you drawn to
I had one of those
legends?
No. I was always into engineering and science, physics. I had a couple of anomalous experiences when I was young, but nothing really too striking, and I kind of just forgot about it and wrote it off as that mustn't have been weird. It must have been something mundane, and I don't know what, but who cares? Or I was just a kid scaring myself or whatever, So I had a couple of out-of-body experiences and some sort of presences felt about the place, and which I eventually told to go away, and they did, and I never thought anything more about it, And it's easy, of course, to look back at that from a materialist, reductionist point of view and go, well, it's all in your imagination, which is what I'd done, prior to thinking there was more going on there.
The can of worms opened. Was that about 10 years ago? How long ago was that?
It was 2018, so
okay,
about seven years ago or something.
Wow, what a wild journey.
Yeah, well, I tried various kind of spiritual practices to see what would suit somebody lazy like me, and various things from the Western tradition, and Hermeticism in particular kind of resonated with me. So that was kind of the path that I went down in parallel with training as a remote viewer. And they go together really nicely, because when you're doing remote viewing training, you're always working blind to the target, right? You describe something about which you have no information. And so if you're right, it was definitely because you were being psychic. There was definitely some kind of anomalous information transfer, because when you're really right, there's no way that this could be happening by chance. It's just too good. So when that process isn't working, it actually gives you a kind of red flag to say there's something going on in your consciousness that you need to examine. There's something wrong here. Like around the beginning of the COVID lockdown here in the UK, there were lots of people getting hospitalized, and if you got hospitalized, there was quite a good chance that you would end up dying in hospital. There was lots of people who were very, very afraid. And myself and some other viewers, not all other viewers, but some other viewers I know, had this dip in performance, like just suddenly missing all our targets. And it coincided with like the time that the maximum peak of hospitalizations was happening, which only worked out later because I made a spreadsheet of all my training results to see, like, why am I missing all my targets? What's going on here? And looking at my own emotions and how long since I last practiced and the phase of the moon and whatever else. And I thought, actually, this is kind of the broader this is society. This is like the psychic noise of everybody around me that's kind of crowding out. And at the beginning of the Russia's invasion of Ukraine as well, there was a lot of strong feelings, and I think it kind of woke up the latent Cold War terror of generations past that lived through the Cold War and had that constant threat of annihilation. That latent fear kind of woke up in a lot of people. So there was a ton of psychic noise and fear kind of rumbling about on the ether then. So yeah.
But this noise doesn't really affect your viewing. It's present. You can feel it.
Well, it did affect my viewing. Also, remote viewers can pick up on the content of thought that is not base reality. If you really strongly believe something, and you're invested in that as an idea. And the classic example here is conspiracy theories. People, if they've got, especially the wild and outlandish conspiracy theory, there's a cave full of gold and aliens and everything it's under there, and then it's in the Grand Canyon and it's all this kind of stuff, right? And they want to get remote viewers to see whether this thing is true, but actually they don't. What they really want is for remote viewers to validate them and to say, this is true, not to find out is it true, is it false, but to tell them it's true, right? To be a wish fulfillment service, right? And this is a really strong idea, and the remote viewer probably wants to make that client happy, right? So what's going to happen is, seeing as the client has tasked something which doesn't exist in physical reality, but the viewer has still been asked to describe it. So they will describe the story and produce an accurate description of whatever this fantasy is. And then that person will take that as evidence that the fantasy is true, right? So it's dodgy. It's a sketchy tool to use, in its own, to try and discover the truth of these, mysterious, weird goings on.
So basically, the noise, the noise in the ether affects the results of the viewer. Basically, just like the psychic, if the sitter wants something, the psychic person can see it.
Or they may deliver it by accident. They might subconsciously give them whatever it is they want rather than whatever is true. Yeah. So, in the case of a good example of this, the beginning of the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there was lots of fear, and we were trying to use associative remote viewing and stuff to see, is there going to be a nuclear event in the next 18 months? And it was really like uncertain, and there was kind of data coming through from different places that suggested really terrible stuff was going to happen. And I didn't go and start digging a bunker outside, because it's a really common phenomenon that the doom and gloom somehow gets amplified. I don't know if it's because it's very emotive or what, but when you get psychic predictions of terrible things happening, they're so often a lot worse. The predictions are a lot worse than the reality turns out to be. And I guess that's perhaps because there's kind of extra fear, or the strong emotions associated with it. Maybe give it extra energy, I don't know, but it's a common thing, So if you see psychic predictions of doom and gloom kind of stuff, I would take them with a huge pinch of salt.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But sometimes what happens, and I'm talking from a psychic perspective, I do psychic mediumship, and so does Suzi, and we have evolved from a evidential mediumship into a knowing, rather than just describing a person, outer appearance, or some general thing about a person. So now we know, we get this feeling, and we know. For example, last year I was in Lima, and I was walking down the streets, and all of a sudden I get it's not a noise, but somebody's telling me that there's going to be an earthquake. And it didn't say it once, and I don't take this as a prediction. It was just for that point in time to say, don't worry, there's going to be an earthquake, but look around, nothing's going to happen. And then that night, there was an earthquake. I think it was 6.0 or something. I can't remember what it was. The building was shaking. Things. I woke up to it, and I go, "Oh, okay, yeah." They said this is going to be shaking. Nothing is going to happen. I went back to sleep, and then in the morning, there was nothing there. So that type of messages, it comes in a very strong vibration.
Yeah, that's a different phenomenon, I think, from what I'm talking about, where people are deliberately going looking for this thing or that thing, and there's somebody who's worried, am I going to get blown up by Russian nukes? So they write down a tasking, the remote viewer will perceive as they're going to be a nuclear blah blah blah, and then they send it to people and they get the data back, and they're doing all this stuff. That's very different from when you get that knowing. It's kind of like a push notification on your phone. You don't have to do anything, it just turns up. Right? And I've had that save me from a car wreck before, where there's a hill near me. It's a really steep road, and it's really narrow, and it's like rocks on one side and a cliff on the other. You can fall off. It's kind of dangerous. And I was going up there. There's a real sharp bend at the top. You can't see who's coming. And something like, I had that knowing. You could describe it as a voice, but it was more like the result of hearing a voice. Like when you listen to somebody speak, some part of you kind of like decodes the words into meaning before you can understand them. And it's not just a noise, it's meaningful. And I think I got it at the layer of meaning, not the layer of noise. So it wasn't exactly clairaudience. It was just like I felt that I was being spoken to, and it was just like pull over. And I knew, I didn't argue with it or question it. I just did it straight away. There was no like questioning, oh, am I making this up? What's going on? That was weird. Am I hearing voices? Am I going crazy? I just pulled the car over, and there was nobody about. Nothing was happening. And 5 seconds went by, and 10 seconds went by, and I was like, I'm starting to feel like I'm an idiot here. Like I'm listening to the voices in my head, and now I'm parked on the road, and nobody's. And just then, this car came like flying around the corner. They were coming way too fast down the hill. They'd obviously misjudged how tight it was, so they were completely over my side of the road. We would have had a really serious crash, and it would have hit on the side of the car. That's the driver's side, so it could have smashed straight into me and killed me if I'd been there. So it probably saved my life, or at least saved me from an embarrassing car wreck. So yeah, that is very different, and that's a personal thing, isn't it? Ingo Swann's book, Your Nostradamus Factor, has loads of great examples of that very thing that warns people, that inner voice that warned you about the earthquake and warned me about the car wreck, and how he hypothesizes that it is part of us. It's like an inner part of us that sometimes feels the need to intervene, and if you ignore it, it will kind of get more and more and more serious in the way that it interacts with you. And there's one example of a woman who had a plane. She had a flight booked, and that plane was going to crash or something. She shouldn't get on it because she'll die. But she really wanted to go on the trip, and so she ignored the voice. So it like made her fall down the stairs and break her arm, so she couldn't get on the plane. And then she's like, "Oh no, I can't go on the trip." And then lo and behold, of course, the plane explodes or whatever happens to it. I don't know. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I should have listened to that voice the first time," which is kind of cool. So yeah, different thing though. But I wouldn't want to say what those two things are. It's really hard to pin down. Can we design an experiment to prove that voice that warns us is one thing or is part of us versus remote viewing data? Where the hell does that come from? I don't know.
But do you not think that it's all like ESP in a way? It's all just a kind of expanded awareness, or perception, and
Well, it
so
is
there's
perception.
refinement. Like,
But
you know,
what
you
are
can.
we perceiving?
Well, you're perceiving, Ramsey's perceiving an earthquake, and that it's okay. You're perceiving that I need to pull in the car there, so you know, I'm going to just
But
follow that, and that it's that kind of inner knowing. Like, it's like just sometimes you know when you know. Other times it's not as strong, and you're, like you said, you'd be like questioning it, going, or pushing back on it, going, no way, I'm not following that, you know. And so there can be a whole other kind of dynamic or dialogue going on in your head. But I don't know, like I was glad that you brought up Ingo Swann, because I recently read his book. I think it's called Penetration. I think is that the one that
yeah,
they put in extra.
like the one, yeah, with new chapter with the crazy stuff on
Yeah.
the moon, and yeah.
Like that, when I read that, like I really had to keep double checking. Am I reading like a sci-fi kind of, like, is it
Yeah.
did this really
It's a
happen? You know?
crazy book. I think I have
Yeah.
it up on the shelf up here, actually.
It, like, if you ever are going through that sort of extra sensory, you know, expanded awareness, reading other people's examples, like that book in particular, I don't know, it just kind of, you're already open. It's like it opens it even more. Like, you know, do you have it there?
I would suggest no. Well, I do somewhere. I can't find it, but my eye just landed on this Ingo Swann book, which is Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP, which I would
Oh
suggest
yeah.
you read instead of Penetration, because Penetration is just mental. It's crazy. It's absolutely, like you say, science fiction, and
Yeah.
maybe it's true. Maybe that's a true account of his subjective experiences, but maybe those experiences that he had are not a reflection of ground truth, consensus reality. But in any case, it's not information we can do anything with. You know, it's
True.
just stories. You can't do anything with the content of that book which will improve your life, I don't think. So
But would it
read this
influence?
one instead.
Okay, hold that one up and maybe put it in the
Okay.
chat, Ramsey. So
Yeah,
it's
this is, oh, hang on, the light's catching in this. Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP.
yeah. I think I have that one too. I think I probably have read that too. But do you not find then that, are you, when you're looking for targets, say you're mentoring somebody or you're practicing, because from what I can gather, you do a lot of practice. It's sort of like a muscle. It's like going to the gym. You're always doing targets, not always
Oh
for
yeah,
work,
I
but
mean, I
within
was
groups.
psychic as a brick before this, you know.
Cool.
Margie says, great book. I open that one all the time.
Aha.
I have never finished reading it, actually, but I also do open it all the time. It's got some really great stuff in.
But yeah, my
So
question was,
where we are, yeah.
would that inspire you to, like, if you're setting targets for somebody you're mentoring or for a group or something like that? Because I know when we met you at the Science and Consciousness conference, you know, you set targets for us, you know, for groups of people to have a go.
Yeah.
And you know, do you ever kind of really like push the boundary away from just bridges or churches or, you know, interesting
Oh
structure?
yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely, but not with beginners. There's a
Okay.
kind of progression of stuff which is easy to get. At first, you know, it's kind of like learning your ABCs or learning to draw as a kid or learning to play a musical instrument, right? You just got to start with the basics and do the things that you can do as a beginner, get good at those, and then build on that foundation. It's not helpful to jump into really complex stuff because you haven't developed the skills and the vocabulary and the stamina and everything. It's just too much. And you might get some stuff right, and you might have some really interesting, cool experiences, but it's going to be sloppy and it's going to be not very repeatable. You know, you'll have these amazing standout sessions which are really great, and I'm speaking from my personal experience here because I didn't get tuition at first. I just tried to teach myself with free stuff off the internet for the first 2 years, and you can go a long way with that, but at the same time I had lots of gaps and I hadn't built strong foundations by doing the hard work. You know, like if you're learning piano, actually you got to play your scales and arpeggios. You can't just jump straight into playing all the fun pieces. You need to practice and teach your fingers how to work, and your mind, and do a bit of theory, and you need those foundations, right? And I neglected those myself, so I had to go back to basics after a couple of years when I decided, actually I do want to pursue this, and I do want to get world class at it and see how far I can take this skill. So that was the point when I go, right, I will get some tuition and I will do what my teacher tells me to do, and we will see what the result is. And that was a good choice. I don't regret that. So yeah, you can do crazy stuff, but like people are great targets. They're really interesting, but beginners will often not see people at all. If I give you a target that is a person, you probably describe the room that they're in and be like, oh yeah, okay, I see the room. Anything else there? Nope. And it's like that. You literally task says, go and look at this person, and you will. It's like they're invisible. And I don't know what happens. That was the case for me. Statues as well, not there. Really odd effect, and it just takes a while. After a while, suddenly it just clicks. You get it. It doesn't happen to everybody, but so we don't start with people. Also, the details for people tend to be a bit more subtle and a bit more hard to get feedback on. If it's a structure, you know what it looks like. You can draw a picture, and you've either drawn this thing or you haven't. The colors are right or wrong. Is it the ocean? Is it the desert? Is where we start the absolute basics, and it's just that. Is it land or is it water? And you learn what that feels like inside the kind of we say the gestalt, but the beingness of the ocean or the land. And usually we feel those feelings at the same time as we're using the language for them, so we're not really used to just feeling the feeling of it on its own, and we don't always recognize it, and we don't necessarily know where in our awareness to look to get that. Everybody gets it in different ways, and different. Some people will hear words, some people will just know, some people will get kinesthetic or visual impressions, and it's all that psychic part of us communicating with the conscious mind in different ways. So yeah, you kind of start with a really easy, really clear, really easy to feed back things where you can. It's super easy to see, was I right, was I wrong? Because it's kind of like, little babies, they can't use their fingers properly, and they wave their arms about, they hit themselves in the head. My favorite one, my eldest daughter, when she was little, like kids love to clap when they learn to clap when they're really little, and it's so much fun, and they're just there, yay, and you can clap, and they'll clap back. And once she was lying in her baby bed thing, and I went over and was clapping to her, and she clapped back, but she clapped with her feet and looked down and went, the hell? And then did it with her hands. It was like, oh yeah, it's these ones, because the wiring isn't quite mature yet, and so learning to access psychic information by using remote viewing as a training method anyway is like that. It's like establishing new kind of neural pathways.
But I know you went on to develop what you refer to as cowboy or RV, that's
that was
a quick version, isn't it? Or is that for somebody who's more experienced, I'm guessing?
Yeah. This is, it's not a method. There's so many different remote viewing methods. Everybody invents another method and gives it an acronym, and it's like, hey, I have solved all these problems, and you should learn my method. It's better than their method. All of them are lists of questions or ways of asking yourself questions, answering them, and writing the answer down. And it's just different questions. Asked in a different order, and different methods work for different people, and they got different styles and stuff. It's fine. It's like different martial arts. They'll all teach you how to fight, but they'll have different focuses, different priorities, and you should pick one and just study it, master it. Don't try and learn 10 all at the same time, right? And don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just find one and do it. So I didn't want to say, here's a new method, you should learn my method, right? Because we don't need another one. We have enough. So Cowboy originally started off as myself and my colleague from the Psychic Guys podcast, Josh. We both do a bit of ceremonial magic, chaos magic, and other kind of fun Western traditions, which involve a bit of summoning deities and demons and things, and all that fun jazz. And we thought, the blind protocol within remote viewing, why don't we combine that with this magical practice? So we've got somebody like an operator, a practitioner, who's going to call up something that they can have a conversation with, but they don't know what it is. So that there's nothing from their imagination or their knowledge which is going to pollute the conversation. And you're just going to get whatever you get, and we'll see what happened. And it worked great. So we started that, that was the origin. We hadn't intended to end up with this ballooning out into a methodological thing. And then, at some point you're speaking with something, I don't know, was it a fictional character, a deity, human, anything you have a conversation with, right? And well, we want some other information that this person doesn't have. And we thought, well, hang on, we're remote viewers, we're trained, we know how to do this, we'll just go and get it. We don't need to get some paper out. So we did that, and I need some more information. And after a while, it kind of became more like, how can we use all the skills that we've learned in our remote viewing practice? How can we use them without a pen, without paper, without structure? Because we train those things, right? But now, we train them in a very regimented way. You do everything in the same order every time. Everything is very controlled and neatly laid out. And it's done that way partly so that your intellect can switch off. So you're just automatic, just like driving a car, right? And that's really helpful. It's a great training tool. But you build up a lot of muscles, if you like psychic muscles in that process. And once those are strong, you don't need to apply them in the process anymore. And Cowboy RV is just like, okay, you've learned all this stuff. Are you going to sit there doing this rote method without pushing the boundaries of what you can do, or trying to make it quicker, or trying to make it better, or trying to adapt it? Or are we going to start throwing away rules? Are we going to see how far can we push this thing? What can we do? What can we do without? Which parts of the methods can we get rid of and still get a good result? Can we make this faster? Do we need this dogma? Do we need that dogma? Wait, a lot of this turns out not to be true. These are just stories remote viewers tell each other that are rubbish. And so it was about kind of becoming a post-methodology practitioner in the end, and saying to people, you've got all these skills. Now that you've really practiced them hard, go your own way in chucking out the rule book. Don't do it my way or somebody else's way, but actually develop a spirit of experimentation, disregard for the rules. Because, the worst that's going to happen is it won't work. Try something else. So yeah, that was Cowboy, and it was called Cowboy RV because we were doing this on the remote viewing Discord voice chat, and we said to Daz Smith, who's a very experienced remote viewer who's been at it nearly 30 years now, we said, hey, do you want to come and join in with some of this stuff that we're doing? And he was teaching controlled remote viewing at the time, which is practicing it, which is very militaristic. It's out of the US military's program. It's their kind of original training system, and it's a good system and everything, but people get kind of quite rigid within it, and we were trying to break that rigidity. So we said, hey, do you want to come and have a go at this and see what we're doing? And he went, no, I'm not doing any of that cowboy shit. And so that was where its name came from. I'm sorry, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
It's too late now. Yeah. That's what he said. So that's how it became Cowboy Remote Viewing, because cool. It was as good a description of it as any. And we were being extremely cavalier in what we were doing. And it was great fun, but it was just absolutely not for beginners,
Yeah. It's good to break that. I love that idea. I love that you kind of were exploring it, dropping parts and just seeing what, as you said, the worst that can happen is that it doesn't work. And then you backtrack so that it starts working again, I guess. So
totally.
Sorry, Ramzi.
It gives you a better understanding of what the processes are within you and within the systems we use to teach this and stuff, because all these different remote viewing methods, they're all good, they all work, and they're training systems. So it's where do we go from there was the question that addressed, I think, or how do we go our own way from there. So that isn't a method, so you can't learn it, even though there are manuals out there that'll tell you how to do it, which is fine, which just
I have a question for you. We're talking about all of these ways that you do, but if somebody's new, doesn't know what remote viewing is, what would be the first step to get there? Is it sit down, close your eyes, and try to see where you're going if you've never done this before, or is there a certain process ahead of time to prepare yourself before you enter into a remote viewing vibe, if you want to call it?
You can do what's usually called a cool down. So that could be meditation or binaural beats or whatever kind of relaxation exercise. You could do affirmations about the non-physical nature of the human consciousness and awareness to remind yourself that this is a possible thing for you to do and to get into that mindset. You heard of the brainwave states like alpha, beta, gamma, delta, the kind of relaxed or concentrating. Well, the beta brainwave state, that's kind of 20 hertz and up. I think it's about there. That's a bit faster than the alpha. Alpha is like relaxing couch potato. It's very relaxed and kind of open. That's a good state to start in. Theta is very good, but that's more kind of a bit of a drooling, almost trance-like state. That's more of a shamanic place. Delta happens when you're asleep, but it also happens with really good psychic work. And gamma is seen in really experienced meditators, and that's an indicator of sort of some big consciousness-y stuff happening, whatever consciousess-y stuff is. And you get spikes of delta and gamma at the same time, so asleep and enlightened simultaneously going on in remote viewers. There's interesting stuff, but the one state I haven't mentioned, which you should avoid, is the beta state. Beta state is the state you use for preparing your taxes and for working out difficult intellectual problems, right? And this state you must not be in. So by whatever means, get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's the 14 to 30 hertz, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think people draw the boundaries a little bit differently. I can't remember where they are, but yeah, don't be in the beta state. But I say to people, because like people worry that I need to be in the special state, and I've been meditating for ages, but I've never had like weird mystical experiences. Am I unable to do this? And no, you're totally able to do this. Everybody is, or really very nearly everybody is able to do this to some extent. Maybe some people have more of a natural aptitude. They can take it further, but everybody can get results which will show them personally, give them some personal evidence. There's a real effect here. Something is going on. You can run this experiment for yourself for free, and you can produce direct evidence of real serious ESP that you are doing yourself. In like my first session took 30 seconds, and it was on a post-it note. Like it is not. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I did no cool down for that. But I wasn't, engaged in a really intellectual beta mode of thought. I've been sitting there watching Russell Targ on YouTube going, nah, no way, fine, I'll try it. Though it wasn't intellectualizing. So yeah, just relax. If you've ever sat in front of the TV, then you have entered the sufficient altered state of consciousness to, that's it, just chilling out. That's it. That's all you need. And yeah, you can use altered states of consciousness. Those are good, but you don't need them. Just be relaxed.
They're happening anyway.
I was going to say, just ask yourself. Yeah, exactly. Like we're almost. I can't say I'm thinking about this too hard. I'm not treating you guys like doing my taxes, right? So I'm probably like in an alpha state now, just because we're relaxing. We're having a nice conversation. It's not an intellectual task, I don't think, is it? So that's how easy it is. So yeah, you can do that stuff if you want. You don't have to.
I want to know something. I'm fascinated at the moment about dreaming, right? And I've been reading a lot and kind of playing with like lucid dreaming, dream planning, dream yoga, sleep yoga, bardo yoga. I've been kind of just I wouldn't say studying, that's a bit of a stretch, but just kind of perusing, having a little read here and there, and trying to remember when I go to sleep some of the stuff that I read. Oh yeah, look at your hands, and know that you're lucid when you look at your hands when you're dreaming. But and I've had intermittent kind of results. Like I'm not results oriented. I'm just kind of more curious than anything else. But I'm curious about whether when you're doing your remote viewing as a practice regularly and as a professional, does that affect you in your dream state too? Like does stuff happen in the dreams? Does information come, or are you just blacked out?
I've had weird dreams occasionally and intermittently. I'll have a dream that is actually probably an astral projection, or a dream where I get some important information. But I think that's a consequence of the kind of walking the spiritual path. I say walking as if it's a choice. getting thrown down the spiritual mountain, whatever, or up it. I think it's a consequence of me being where I am, just in my spiritual state of being, that happens. I don't think remote viewing has caused it for me. It does kind of open you up if you go from nothing and you're not doing other spiritual practices. Remote viewing, because you're concentrating so hard on the parts of your awareness that are kind of extrasensory, right, and non-local, you're kind of forcing that avenue open a bit, if you want, and it can kind of open people up, and then they can have frightening experiences where they kind of come into contact with the weird, freaky, scary things that are out there in the psychic space suddenly, and it's a big shock because remote viewing as a field comes from this very like buttoned down laboratory background, which deliberately threw away all the mysticism, it threw away all of the spirituality, and it actually got rid of all of the things which would normally serve as preparation and safeguards that would prepare somebody who developed these skills to not freak out when they encounter that stuff, right? So as a discipline, it's not enough to learn remote viewing, because it will kind of blow the doors open sometimes with enough practice, and then you'll start seeing astral entities and having weird stuff happen, and you just have no way to deal with it. So I think it's a good idea to, at the very least, have a meditation practice, hopefully have some kind of spiritual tradition. I mean, I'm not saying like go and join an ashram or something. You don't need to be a real devotee of this thing or that thing, but to just have some kind of spiritual grounding and awareness, and do some practices, try and start healing your trauma, do the work, do the boring work, do the personal development work, because remote viewing will take you into that kind of territory without any context and any grounding, and it can people can get in trouble doing that. So yeah, sorry, I can't speak exactly to dreams, because I had like a really hardcore meditation practice and was doing all kinds of other stuff when I started remote viewing, so I couldn't say that there was a causal thing. But with the variations in the amount of practice that I've done, I don't think it's correlated with my occasional weird nighttime experiences. But I don't know. Interesting question. I think Dale Graff is like super into dream stuff and precognitive dreams, so he might be worth looking up.
Oh yeah, defo. Ramzi, sorry, you have a burning question. I can feel it psychically.
He's forgotten what it is now.
Like,
yes.
Squirrel,
What was it? No, I was wondering if since now there's a lot of emphasis on contact and UFOs, and I think they're called now UAPs and so on. Have you been contacted to remote view that, or have you done your own investigation into it? And what could you tell us
over the
it?
years? I have been tasked a few times to look at stuff like that, and I don't know why, but I'm quite skeptical, and even overly skeptical maybe, of a lot of the beliefs that persist around the phenomenon, right? Because obviously something is happening. Lots of perfectly rational, skeptical people who are really embarrassed to talk about having these experiences and didn't want to, and are not into the woo-woo at all, are having experiences that are really disrupting their lives, and like something is going on here. And sometimes it happens with multiple witnesses, and they all agree roughly on what they saw, and something's happening here, right? But the idea that it is little green men in flying saucers, the materialist explanation, doesn't work. The idea that because they are seen to be moving in an unnatural manner, they must be an aircraft, therefore, that's not really supported by evidence. It's just an assumption, right? Because it is an aircraft, which it isn't, it must have a pilot and occupants, which it doesn't. There are things that go on all over the earth, in the sky and in the ocean and in the other planes of existence, which look really weird. And I think at least a great deal of the time, they're kind of phenomena of consciousness. It does appear that maybe there's some of it's physical as well, but one memorable one that I viewed was the formation of a really famous crop circle, and I cannot remember the name of this one. It was one in the UK, and there's some like shaky camcorder VHS video from, and this was taken before anybody had like After Effects on their laptop and could just fake these videos really easily, you know, so it's kind of a little bit more plausible like that. And there's just lights flying around in the field, and you see the crops kind of going underneath, you know, there's no the thing isn't like landing and squishing them or something. You just see the crops collapse in a pattern, and it's like, if it's fake, it's a really good one for its time, and it's kind of a mystery. So I was tasked that, and I got a whole bunch of stuff about, basically it was kind of like a priestess kind of figure. Like there was a bit of pagan magic stuff going on. And that same woman, like I drew the sketch of her, and I was talking to another viewer about it, and she said, "Oh shit, I was doing another one of these things in this area. I got the same woman in mind." And like, I don't know who she is, but there's some kind of like folk magic-y thing associated with, you know, crop circles in the UK. It's its own thing, and I think there's lots of the strange stuff going on there. Right? There's the only guy who's ever been convicted of criminal damage or whatever it is for making them. He said sometimes he felt like compelled to go out and do it, you know, that he just felt a need, like, oh, tonight's the night, and he was inspired to do it by some kind of force outside of himself. He wasn't, you know, sitting there going, oh, won't this be funny, let's come up with some good ideas. He was like, oh no, tonight I've got to go out, I've got to do it. And this is, you know, he was sort of guided by some unseen force to do this. And I think I've kind of described something of that unseen force in those remote viewing sessions. I don't have them to hand, I'm afraid, so it'll take me a little while to dig them out. But so that's an example of like, there's lights flying around in the air, there's weird stuff happening on the ground, people are going, it's little green men in tin cans flying about with special magic engines made of physics and molecules and stuff. And then my remote viewing data and others are saying there's this whole other strand to this stuff going on. And I'm not saying there aren't any weird anomalous craft in the sky. There probably are. But if we look back at historical accounts of interaction with the phenomena in the 40s and the 50s, when the aliens come, they're wearing like those glass fish bowls on their heads, and they're wearing jumpsuits, you know, like, oh, hello, we're from Mars and we're from Venus and stuff. And those are still, you know, authentic accounts of people who really had those experiences, right? But the way the experience looks is the way they experience it is changing culturally, right? So the phenomenon is reflecting the culture of the time back at the people experiencing it, which tells you something really important about it, I think.
I think though, David, like there's a few layers to this. I feel like we probably need another half an hour, but realistically, like those guys like in Hollywood have a lot to, you know, they've given us so much information, you know, so much visual kind of imaginary stuff coming out of Hollywood, right? So they're filling up your subconscious mind with concepts and ideas and, you know, shapes and forms and things like that. So, you know, when people are tapping into something like that, you know, it's not that it doesn't exist. It's just, it does exist on an imaginal level, let's say. But
yeah,
with
the grey aliens that people see today, you could say they, you know, they really were brought into a common experience by Steven Spielberg, right?
Yeah.
Rather than
like
you know?
The blue beings. Apparently, I've heard so many people talking about these blue beings, you know, Arcturians, talking about solar flares. And like, I'm not a big fan
or
of
doom and gloom.
Oh, look at the doggy! But what I was thinking about was the. She loves being on. She loves being on the show. It does, Bella Luna.
What an adorable dog!
But
if I picked my dog up here, he'd be really cross. He hates being picked up.
But the blue beings, I was feeling into it, and like I've never even seen the film Avatar, but I know that they're kind of blue. So I often wonder, are these taking a form that exists? You know what I mean? But it does mean that the message isn't pure.
A place that certainly not. Look at channeled messages the world over. There's a lot of contradictory stuff, you know. It's not just because it's spiritual or channeled or something doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean you can trust the source. It doesn't mean the source knows what it's talking about. The things that you can communicate with, even assuming that we are communicating with something else, that people might be making stuff up. I think a lot of people are not, and are genuinely, engaged in a practice where they don't know where this stuff's coming from, and it's probably coming from somewhere else. But it's kind of like people, right? They're extremely variable, and some of them are scumbags, and some of them know a lot less than they think they do, and some of them really want to help you out, but haven't got a lot of time. And some of them don't even speak your language, and are just concerned with other things, and you have nothing in common. And you ask them for help, and they'll be like, "Ooh, I can only really answer in terms that are not terribly useful." Yeah, and some of them want to frighten you, because when people have a strong emotional reaction, it allows them to be manipulated, and some of them do want to mess with people, which is certainly relates to the UFO, the alien abduction experience. One thing that I have remote viewed in quite some detail is this idea of I don't know if it's your astral body or energy body or some kind of non-physical part of you is what is being taken. And that's why it floats through the wall so easily, right? Because it's non-physical, right? And I saw this happening to somebody in a remote viewing session I was doing, and it was horrible. It was really unpleasant what was kind of done to this guy, but his body never left where he was living. The physical body was completely fine, but he was having this experience that was kind of forced upon him, and they kind of pulled his consciousness out into space and were showing him lots of kind of like distorted images of the universe and these crazy ideas, and it was kind of like a brainwashing kind of thing. It was really unpleasant and unethical. It was deeply uncool. But I think a lot of these experiences that people have are probably more likely to be that experience, to be a kind of transcendental, transpersonal, out of body kind of experience, rather than a physical. Like Occam's razor doesn't say the simplest answer is most likely to be right. It says the answer which requires us to make the fewest number of assumptions is more likely to be right. So we're already well familiar with out-of-body experiences, astral travel and stuff, where people have the experience of having a body that is made of energy and is not their physical body and can travel through solid matter, and they can move around the physical world, and they can go to other places, they can go to other planes of existence and experience all this wild, wonderful stuff. And sometimes they have psychic experiences, sometimes they see dead relatives. You know what? Sometimes people get taken to the alien spaceship and they see their dead relatives. How does that make any sense with this narrative that these are just physical beings from another place? There's lots of different, or what we would label as lots of different phenomena kind of getting mashed up, and I think the confusion is coming from the extremely subjective way that people are experiencing it. Because just going back to the astral entities, astral parasites, which are not doing this, they're really basic. They're like mosquitoes or something. They're just a minor irritation that you have to kind of learn to deal with when you get out into this territory. And those things want to frighten people and spin them a good story. So if you see a real good story that is making you the main character, you're special, you're going to help in this big thing that is this great mission to bring peace to the galaxy or save the world or something, big red flag there. They sell great stories, but they also people go, how are they so good at manipulating me? How do they know all my weaknesses and fears? And they don't. They're extremely simple. What you're experiencing is reflection, right? So if you watch a movie, listen to the music. They'll use some chords. You should be happy. Now we should be a little concerned. Now we're triumphant. Now we're very sad. Uh-oh, bum, bum, bum. Right? You'll have all these different musical chords, which will just trigger an emotion like that. We're just conditioned. And it's very much the same with these kind of non-physical astral plane interactions. It is much more like they're playing a chord on the keyboard, except you're the keyboard, and the chord they're playing is I'm a scary monster. So your subconscious is like, well, I'm seeing a scary monster. Let's dredge around in the imagery in there. Often it's lizards. Everybody is scared of snakes and reptiles because they're dangerous, and we have evolved on a planet where they kill us constantly. So that now we've got the lizard people, because people see these reptilian forms because we're frightened of them, not because they're real. It's because you're scared of it is why you're seeing it, not because they're lizard people harvesting your loosh. You know, same with the grey aliens. We saw the movie. Well, it's a monster. It's from somewhere out there. It's scary. It's mysterious. Grey aliens, boom. You know, and I once saw. There's this phenomenon of being jump scared by these things. Sometimes you will see a face go right up in your like non-local perception and your sort of psychic vision or third eye or whatever. You just see them and it's scary. And it happens to non-practitioners. It happens to kids. It has a relatively common thing. And it's got some quite clearly defined diagnostic criteria, you know, that it's a sudden brief flash. It looks like a photo negative. It's looking directly at you. It comes with emotional impact, a sense that this is like more than mental imagery, more than conventional mental imagery. It's a really distinct phenomenon, right? And I once had that experience where the image that I saw was a grey alien with sticky outy vampire fangs, right? Which makes just no sense, right? Vampires, grey aliens, totally different, you know, movie franchises, right? They're just both scary monsters, and something in my subconscious had kind of like mushed those together. Well, you're scared of vampires, you're scared of aliens, let's mix them together. Or they somehow. So that was a really great clue for me that what I'm seeing just is not a real thing. You know, since when did grey aliens even have teeth, let alone vampire fangs? This is just a ridiculous Halloween costume concocted by my subconscious in order to fulfill the need to have a visual representation of the scary ass monster that is actually nothing more than a thought form and is not to be worried about at all.
Is that
sorry, that was a very long answer, roundabout.
Very long. But a good one. I enjoyed it. But do you not think that scary monster that's coming right up in your face like that is an aspect of your shadow or something that's a part of you that needs to be integrated?
I used to think so. Yeah, because I would rather see the horse than the zebra, right? And there's enough weird, anomalous stuff without assuming that there's even more. And you can deal with that phenomena as if it is purely psychological. And then I didn't begin, when I was first taught to deal with that, I treated it as just psychological, like a personification of some kind of complex that I had or what, you know. And what's great about it is that you can treat people without them having to believe in any woo-woo, right? You can fix this problem when people experience it with just psychological stuff, basically, by treating that thing as something that you can talk to me like, well, let's talk to this part of your psyche then. And I was really happy with the psychological explanation because it works fine, until one day I fixed this problem in one individual, and it's entity attachment, right? And it was affecting their behavior. It was making them kind of particularly annoying in a certain way. I can't remember the exact thing, but you know, it was like really pushing their buttons and causing them to act up in this specific way. And so I fixed it in that person, and I saw it go away in another person at the same time. I was like, whoa, this person over here is their behavior spontaneously changed, and both of these people have just lost this annoying behavior. And, you know, the other person didn't know that this healing was going on. There was no, you know, so that was the point when I was kind of forced to go, maybe these are transpersonal in nature. So I now look at them. If your shadow is kind of like a stack of pancakes, you know, that you have a trauma, and then that trauma attracts more traumas, and you kind of get these core beliefs about, you know, I'm always late, I'm not worthy of love, whatever it is, and it attracts this, you know, you end up with a stack. These entities kind of get in between, and whatever their shtick is, whatever their you know, because they have a story. They're not proper beings. They're not like you and I. They're like a little scramble of emotion and thought that just, you know, they can be created by rumination and by people having really stressful events in their lives, or they can be created on purpose. They're just, think of it like writing in the sand at the beach. You know, they're as easily erased as they are created. But if you write a really nasty message in the sand and somebody sees it and it really hurts their feelings, it's still a real thing that you've created, even though the medium, the sand, is a very ephemeral thing. Then it will be gone, it'll be washed away by the sea soon, but that person's still going to go home in tears, right? So even though these things are not substantial in themselves, they can have a real impact on people, because whatever the story, the basis of the emotional complaint or pattern that is the the kind of knot which holds these things together, has some kind of resonance with us. That's why they're there. It's like sympathetic resonance. If you get two tuning forks that are the same note, if you ring one, the other one will start to ring. And our mental shadow, subconscious trauma content will kind of resonate with these things, and they'll just go and kind of magnet together. So when you start doing the shadow work and going through picking off the pancakes in your stack of traumas and crap, you uncover these things, and they go, "Whoa, I'm a scary monster," and you go, "Jesus Christ, what was that?" And you go to your teacher, and they go, yeah, okay, let's do this thing. So that is my best understanding of how that stuff works.
I have to interject for a sec. We have a couple of questions online.
Oh, cool.
What's your thought on the drone invasion that occurred a few months ago?
Oh, that was interesting. I didn't get tasked to remote view it, and unfortunately, everybody was really interested in it. So, if we're talking, hey, this news article is cool about these drones, what do you think about this? Hey, can you do this blind remote viewing task for me, by the way? Everyone's going to be thinking, oh, no, it's the drones. And my feeling was that it was more a human thing than a extraterrestrial breakaway civilization or whatever kind of thing. I think there would be it fits with what people perceive that it could be China or Russia, probably China. They're very good at drones, showing off its absurd military supremacy, and the United States absolutely not wanting to admit quite how much its airspace is being violated beyond its control. That's a possibility. And little bits of remote viewing that were done it, not under very good conditions, sometimes not under blind conditions. It looked like a human military kind of thing. So not hobbyists flying drones, not aliens, some kind of military secret geopolitical goings on that were a little bit opaque. I'm afraid I haven't seen it identified in great detail. I think they're human technology. They weren't sort of magic flying saucer wibbly wobbly things. They were drones with propellers, and people were hearing propeller noises, I think, when they were going over. They were quiet, but they weren't silent, or they weren't going like whoa 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 whoa, whoa. They sounded like drones with propellers on. So yeah,
I thought they heard "We're here to save you." That was a joke. Another question: do you find if you have a headache, can you see better in remote viewing? That happened to me. Yeah.
I don't really get headaches, so I don't know. But I would say if you've got something that is distracting your intellectual mind, that can actually help. Especially, if you're thinking, I'm sick, I got a headache, or I got a cold, or I got the flu, I'm really tired or something. First of all, it gives you an excuse to fail. So you stop caring about succeeding. And attachment to results is the number one way to fail and not get the results, right? Margie's just said I get headaches when it's too much data, and yeah, I've had headaches caused by remote viewing targets and too much data and stuff. But do they act? Is there something specific about a headache which makes remote viewing better? I don't think so. No, I think maybe it's a knock-on effect of it. So maybe if you had a toothache or a broken bone or something, you might find a similar increase. I don't know.
David, what's the big noise that you were talking about in remote viewing before we went live? Sorry. Did you see there's another question? We'll go back to the question.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, no, wrong. Don't we have control over where our astral body travel and over what happened to it?
No.
That's the last question.
Sometimes.
Oh, yeah, one more. Sometimes.
But not always. Yeah. I mean, if you learn astral projection, you learn to move it around, right? But what happens if you just pop out, you don't know what you're doing, you think you're dreaming, sort of very vulnerable potentially.
I think if you're doing it consciously, if you're doing that consciously, you have more control over where you're going. I was studying that at one stage, and it was very clear instructions, a bit like the remote viewing of where we were going, and And I remember thinking, really, could we not think of a better place than this? Because we were going back to our kitchen to look in the fridge,
Yeah.
you know? And I was like, wow, the kitchen fridge, cool. But
Yeah.
I think it was just to show kind of how it works. And then, but it's got a lot of potential too, the astral work.
Well, this has been tried, and there's a way to do this for remote viewing called extended remote viewing, which was, this came before controlled remote viewing. And Paul Smith, who's one of the military remote viewers or ex-military remote viewers, said extended remote viewing is a waste of a good nap, which there's some truth to, because it provides a very immersive visual experience. I've done it twice just to check it out, kick the tires on it, and I could name the target within a couple of minutes of beginning the remote viewing process. I could say what it was and describe, and I was seeing really amazing levels of visual detail. It was great. The problem with it is there's a very long cooldown period to get into a sufficient level of trance. And if you've got kids or any noise or something that's going to disturb you, you know, you spend 25 minutes trying to get your whole body completely relaxed and get in this like focus 10 state, I guess, but like really super relaxed, doing guided muscle relaxation and stuff. And then, you know, kid comes in like, hey, daddy, can you do this thing? I want to fly my kite. And you're like, I've just been trying, you know, the whole thing's out the window and now I'm going to start again. And then also, you know, you're basically asleep. If you start moving around and taking notes, you've busted the trance. So you kind of got to remember everything and bring it back with you. So, you know, you get a couple of pages of stuff and you're trying to draw things going, did it look like this or did it look like that? That was a fleeting impression. You know, you can't. So it's actually kind of useless. It is one thing it's really good for is written text, numbers, dates, proper names, which are not conceptual data, is great for that. If you want to know the date of the next market, top or bottom, use extended remote viewing. I've just seen numbers just visually, like they're just printed, perfect sensory font, super clear, and that is much harder to do with a lighter, you know, not really an altered state, just a relaxed state, a theta state, like you'd usually do remote viewing in. Yeah, Care Bear says I have twin 3-year-olds. Wow. Yeah, late at night is where it's at.
But I'd say the 3-year-olds are probably really good at it. Have you ever given any kids targets?
Yeah, like one of my kids asked what I was doing, and I kind of explained in really simple terms. And she was like, "Can I have a go?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, knock yourself out." And yeah, she did some good little beginner things, and she thought it was pretty fun. And then just went back to Lego. And she occasionally likes to do it, but like I don't try and push it on them. I think from other people I've heard talking about this, kids are brilliant at it because they haven't learned all of the beliefs and untruths that we internalize in the kind of Western education system. They haven't kind of had that crushed out of them yet, and they're very open-minded and they're really great at it, and they don't care. They don't see any great significance to this ability. It doesn't upset any ontological apple carts for them. They're just like, oh, cool, okay, what's for dinner? They don't care, you know. So I guess it'd be quite infuriating teaching children because it's, wow, you're so good at this, you could do so much with it, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to, I don't give a shit. It's just fun thing that I did, you know. I'm gonna go do make like friendship bracelets now that are of equal importance to me. So yeah, if my kids want to do it when they're older, they're very welcome to. But like, it's not a religion. You can do what they like.
Well, it won't be such a rude awakening for them because they'll have, you know, grown up hanging out with you as their dad. Like, so I think that's
yeah. I mean, I don't lie about what I do.
Consciousness is going, you know.
Yeah. Equally, it's not going to be a shock for them to discover this stuff's real. Like, it was a huge shock for me because I just totally thought it wasn't, and it is.
But I think that's what's the coolest thing being a dad, like, because you're busting through all of these, you know, limitations or, you know, cultural beliefs or whatever, you know, worldviews, and like your kids are growing up, you know, with a completely different maybe parameters or experiences.
Maybe. I think anybody with beliefs in any, you know, people with specific religious beliefs or indeed atheistic beliefs would all feel that about how they were raising their kids, though, right? They'd always go, I'm really glad that I'm the one who's right. Are my children lucky to be brought up correct in this world full of incorrect people, because that's the nature of belief. And I might be able to wave a massive stack of proper laboratory experiments which validate what I'm doing is real around, but then a lot of it I can't validate with decent quality science. It's just, well, that's my experience. I don't know if this stuff's real at all, but that's kind of how it looked. And I like that if they have spontaneous experiences which are frightening, A, they can feel comfortable talking to me, and B, I can actually probably help in a practical way. And if there's spooky things, I'm qualified to get rid of the spooky things, and then it's no problem. You can just go to sleep, which is nice.
Well,
rather than going, it's just a dream. Stop it! You're making it up, and they're there like having some kind of experience, like, oh shit, and their parents are inadvertently gaslighting them. Which is I guess common.
I find sometimes with children, you can work with them to remove their fear with a silly little thing, a word, or I'm always here right next to you, or you can even get a rock and put it under the pillow, and this is going to save you from the monster under the bed, and they'll overcome their fear with that simple little gesture. Very simple. Anyways,
it is the fear itself which is the problem, isn't it?
Yes.
And it may be
the hour where
fear is caused by. Oh, I can go on until because we actually started an hour earlier than we thought. That's sorry to everybody who was waiting on the beginning of the stream. That was my fault. It was in my calendar at the wrong time. So I had to come with my cap in hand, apologizing for being late. So that means I can go on for like 2 hours or something. So it's fine by me. If you guys want to keep going, I'm happy to.
We can go on for a bit more. Yeah, that's fine. It's interesting. I'm just checking the essentials targets, basic, never any pressure to do it. Yeah. I believe it's a key that to let it freely develop without putting any pressure on a child. So you were saying, sorry, I interrupted. I was trying to manage the time, but we're good for another couple of minutes. No problem. Go ahead.
What the big noise? Big noise in remote viewing at the moment is the crossover from the people who are interested in the UAP phenomenon, because I think it's becoming more broadly accepted that there's a really serious aspect of consciousness underpinning this. And just from my own personal opinion, I'm an idealist. I think all of matter arises from consciousness, not the other way around, right? So it's not a big problem to me. It's like, oh really? But I think there's a lot of explicit materialist hypotheses and kind of unexamined materialist bias in how people think about it. That's kind of where people have been coming from, and they're coming up from even though they wouldn't say I'm going to rule out consciousness things. There, you can see all of the steps of reasoning are kind of trying to cram what is not necessarily a physical material phenomena into materialist models. And in the past, the UFO people didn't want anything to do with the remote viewing people, because they said, that's woo-woo, it's made up. We don't want to be associated with this pseudoscience. And I think the feeling was mutual. So the two fields are kind of coming more together now. I think a lot of people are starting to talk about remote viewing in the same sentence as UAPs, not always accurately to what remote viewing is, which is, of course, the protocol of a specific target is viewed deliberately. The viewer is blind to the target, so they don't have any information about it. They record their perceptions, and then they get feedback. It's a laboratory protocol. It doesn't tell you how to be psychic or what to do with it, but it is talking about gathering data while under blind conditions, right? And then you can use these methods like extended remote viewing, where you have a nap, and controlled remote viewing, where you write pages and pages of stuff and do ideograms and sketches and matrices and stuff, or you can do your own thing. It's all within that protocol. That's why it's remote viewing and not just being psychic, right? And I think maybe because it has that scientific kudos or cachet or whatever, I think people are overloading the term remote viewing to refer to things which it is not. When it comes to psychic or non-local interaction with stuff relating to the phenomena, which I would recommend people don't do. Really, if you want to go from no experience with these things, say you've just kind of had a materialist worldview, you've got no spiritual practice, no meditation practice, you haven't done your shadow work, you haven't kind of done all that difficult personal development stuff, don't go trying to summon lights in the sky and beings to come and talk to you and stuff, because it really is a case of careful what you wish for. Some people would like to say that oh, it's all positive, the star people are coming to save us, it's all good and there's nothing to worry about, and that's not the case. So I would caution people to kind of treat that like a Ouija board, that you're kind of dialing a random phone number and anybody could pick up, right? So don't trust them. Don't take their word for it. You could be phoning someone in a real bad neighborhood, right? So
I think
yeah,
grounding,
a word of caution there. It is interesting. Yeah, grounding, definitely. Well,
grounding is
I
the
gave up
key.
wearing shoes when we had the COVID lockdowns here. I was just out in the garden. We had a lovely summer. I was out in the garden all summer barefoot, and then winter came. I didn't want to put shoes back on, and I've got kind of progressively more hobbit-like since then. And now my feet have toughened up. I'm out in like December. I don't think I went out barefoot in January, but I was out in pretty cold weather now. And it's grounding was why I started doing it more regularly, and it's been great. It's so valuable. So like that. But they say touch grass. You should touch grass, like literally go and touch the dirt with your skin, even if that's putting your hand on the ground or on a tree or something. Like go and
Yeah.
touch natural physical reality regularly and kind of breathe into that a bit. And
I could
let
see
your
how
energy
people could get totally carried away. Like you can see how, when it's like getting a dopamine hit, I suppose, when you hit a target and you look at your drawing and you're like, oh my God, I got it. Like, and you don't know how you got it really, but it just, you've had some
I
beginner's
don't know
luck
either.
definitely. And my other thought I was thinking about when you were talking there is, because I'm reading a lot about morphic resonance and the morphic field, and what do you think about like the idea that there's like a remote viewers morphic field? You know what I mean? Like there's they say like the more, let's take the 100 monkeys, like the more monkeys that were eating the sweet potatoes or whatever that theory was,
I know,
in the neighboring islands, they were picking up on it too, and even
they
in
learn the
lab
skill more
experiments
easily.
with rats, they put rats into mazes that were from completely different backgrounds. They weren't
It's
linked,
like
they
once
weren't genetically
one
linked.
rat solves it, then the other ones find it easier to solve. Another
Yeah.
thing that I heard about, apparently it is easier when people synthesize new types of crystals, like chemists mixing up stuff to grow different kinds of compounds into crystals. Apparently it's really tricky to do. And when one
Yeah.
person's managed it, it's way easier for other people to do it after they've made it happen, which is crazy. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. I just heard somebody saying that. I don't know if it's true, but that's kind of like a non-animal or human, a non-sentient, or seemingly non-sentient from our perspective example of the 100 monkeys. So yeah, I mean, you can generalize all this stuff into everything arises from consciousness, that the fundamental unit of the quanta that we're playing with are informational, right? That everything is kind of thought as information. This is all God having a dream, if you like. And that is the morphic field is kind of one manifestation of that, or one way of looking at that. Another phenomenon is that people do not have ideas. Ideas have people, right? And the ideas will have their time, and two people will invent the same thing at the same time. Two people will write the same weird specific novel at the same time. Political movements, all sorts of things happen, and it seems like individuals making free will choices and having individual creativity. But actually, I think if you have the inspiration for that story and you don't write it, a few years' time, somebody else will have written it, and you'll see it and be like, I had this exact same idea and I didn't write it. And it's just gone to, and it's like this, the information is kind of churning around and developing and evolving, and it will come up one way or another, like whack-a-mole. It's going to keep on coming up through the surface into physical reality through us, and we can allow ourselves to be channels for that, not in the sense of channeling, but just to be a conduit for kind of the that informational evolution that might underpin reality, or be a sort of low-level mechanism of it, or we can go, no, I don't want to, I refuse to play, and I think that's fine too. That's okay. I don't think there's a value judgment in it, but I think it's there if you want it. So practicing remote viewing and mediumship and magic and meditation, or whatever it is, if you're tapping into that, that is the place that you can, it's like the wellspring of creativity and all these amazing ideas and stories. And I'm not a writer. I don't do creative writing at all. I don't know how to do it. And I've had like a plot for a novel in my head when I woke up in the morning from a dream, and it's like, where has this come from? Really?
Yeah.
Like, I never think about this kind of creative activity. It's not mine. Basically, it's a cool story though, and I haven't written it down, but it's a cool concept. Maybe make a short story.
But apparently, if that's hanging out there, just kind of in your field, as soon as you put the pen to paper, your fingers on the keyboard, you can probably just stream it all in there, like with that intention.
So,
Yeah.
Or at least the bullet points. Yeah.
A start.
It's like the just knowing. Yeah.
Oh, what's on the thing?
Margie says the UAP people talk about consciousness playing a role in piloting UAPs, but many are scared of developing their own psychic abilities. Lots of people are scared of developing their own psychic abilities, UAP or not. There's a lot of worry that it's against God's law, whatever religion you're in, or that you'll be opening the door to demonic evil forces, which I guess it's occasionally true, but it's not something that ever stopped me. And I don't know, I haven't surveyed people on the reasons for their fear. I'm sure there are more reasons than just those, but it is really common to be nervous about this because it's a big leap, right? It's the unknown, and it's a whole new skill set, and it's much easier to sit on the shore and watch people swimming and go, oh, that's cool, but I could never do that, than it is to jump in the sea and risk drowning. And you get in there and it's only like this deep, and it's actually fine. The universe will almost always not allow you to drown. It's okay to dip your toes in. But if people are scared and they don't want to do it, don't do it. You don't have to do it, right? As to consciousness and piloting UAPs, going back to Occam's razor, if you were having a out of body experience or more like an astral projection kind of experience, you would expect, just as in a lucid dream, that the content of your experience would respond to your will, your desire. So if you were dreaming about flying a spaceship with your mind, it would make more sense to me in that context, if people have had that experience.
What does Care Bear Bard of Cards say? Sometimes I feel what I'm seeing or smell or feel pressure somewhere, and it ended up being a person carrying a heavy load on their back. Is that
like a metaphor? Is the heavy load kind of metaphorical? Wait.
Yeah. So we have another one from Margie.
I'll read out the question because we put this out on audio as well.
Sure. So Margie asks, can remote viewers amplify each other's abilities and accuracy or inaccuracies when viewing together? I don't know. Certainly claims to that effect have been made. I don't know how well borne out by good quality evidence those claims are, but they're certainly not disproven. Two things which happen with groups of viewers. One, they might all agree, which, going back to the example of people using remote viewers as a psychic wish fulfillment machine to tell them what they want to hear, can make that problem a lot worse, because then, but now all the remote viewers agree, so they must be accurate if they're all saying the same thing, and actually they're all saying the same thing, which is an idea rather than ground truth, right? So it lends false weight to a hypothesis. Another thing which happens, which is really interesting, is you get like a load sharing effect, where if you have loads of people working the same target in the same project, they will focus on different areas, and when you come to put all the data together, it will fit like this jigsaw puzzle, and you'll have the complete picture. And there's obviously no, like, the viewers are not working at the same time or anything. It is like the result of this. I think the way this works is the result in the future where we have our feedback, we find out what the task was, and our data, our remote viewing data, and they come together and we see that they match and we go, hooray, something cool happened. I think that event in the future is what is drawing all of our session work and our activity towards it. So instead of thinking of it as like, oh, well, the subconscious minds of the viewers, they all go to a special meeting room that nobody's consciously aware of, and they work out, I'm going to do this bit and you're going to do that bit, and they write a plan and they go back to their bodies and then they do the plan. You know, like thinking about it in terms of linear causality and agency like that makes it really overcomplicated. And I think the reality is in the future, this is going to happen. And as remote viewers, we're allowing ourselves to be that conduit for it happening, right? We're allowing ourselves to be the people that the ideas have. You know, like ideas have people, people don't have ideas. And this is an idea that's going to come out in the future, the remote viewing data, and we're going to allow that to flow through us, right? So that is why when the viewers work together on a project, this bit comes from that person, and this person looks at the past, and that one does the future, and this person does the building, and that person does the people inside it, and it all comes together to make a nice coherent picture, right? And it's kind of more like pouring water through a sieve. You know, the water will go through each individual hole, but it'll come back together in a cup underneath.
Yeah.
Just like the data will just fall through whichever individual viewer, but it will come back together to be coherent at the end.
Can I ask you just because I loved when Ramzi was on the Psychic Guys. I was listening to that chat between you guys, and you were reminiscing
about tea so much.
Well, when you got past the tea, and it was kind of fun listening to you talking about, you know, because I was there in Broughton for the Science and Consciousness conference too, and you were talking about Ramzi sort of interrupting some, I don't know, some field of protection around the woods, and how did the disruption of the field of protection in the woods affect the outcome of the remote viewing experiment? You know, so because you had some really cool.
Where did you find that?
Wow, where did that come from? My God,
I have it on my computer.
Wow, cool. That is my very, very quick remote viewing session that I did on. Because Ramzi said, you know, I had this experience in the woods. I felt this like energy barrier thing. What do you think that was? Was that supposed to happen? And I was like, no, it's definitely not supposed to happen. You guys are supposed to be having like an ESP experience. Nobody should be getting zapped or going into any weird experiences like this. It's not happening to anybody else, Ramzi. It's just you. And but I went to I suppose this wasn't remote viewing because I wasn't blind to the target, but I didn't experience it. I didn't have any information about it. And that couple of sketches that you just saw, if you're watching the video, is my perceptions of it, that it was kind of a barrier on one side and it had a sort of black hole, weird portal, empty, strange feeling inside. It was very hard to describe. I don't think these things have a very good like physical analogy. There isn't anything in our normal physical experience which is like these sorts of weird metaphysical things, so you end up using a lot of metaphors and woolly language trying to describe them, and you can kind of feel what they feel like, and it's like, oh, that's really weird, and it's sort of like a wormhole, but it sort of isn't, and it's kind of like you're somewhere else but you're not, and it's flat, and it's, you know, you end up really tripping over your words trying to describe that stuff. But I drew some pictures of it, and so that was what Ramzi had there. It's not necessarily true, but he said to me that I had that experience. I perceived this, and then we both thought, you know, who would be making weird energy structures in the woods? It could only be one guy, and we both asked him, and he was like, yeah, I did. And he said to me, if anybody goes in there with a chainsaw, it will end badly for them. So there you go. Good job you didn't go in there with a chainsaw.
I'm glad I left my chainsaw at home that day. God.
Oh, well, oddly, I just didn't bring mine to the conference. Didn't think I'd need
it. Fair enough.
I guess technically I was holding mine.
Yeah. You somehow tripped the tripwire.
Yes, I did. Interesting. We're half past the hour. I
better wrap it up.
Yeah, we better wrap it up. I would like to thank everybody that was live with us. Thank you all for your comments, your questions, and everything. If you want to connect with David, intuitiveops.pro. That's his website, intuitiveops.pro. It's actually in the comments below. And also you can find him on the YouTube at The Psychic Guys. And do check his channel. It's awesome. Love all the interviews that he has, especially mine. And on that note, we'd like to thank you, David, for being with us today. And please well, my God, I lost the chain of thought. But I want to thank you for staying longer for an hour after, because something is happening on my computer and I don't want it to do any funny stuff before I hang up. Yes, so thank you for staying longer. It's an hour and a half. We really appreciate it. And actually, we'll have you for the third time also. We would love to continue this discussion, because we can talk for another 2 hours, basically. And Suzi and Dave, it's late at your end. Thank you for being with us, and for everybody. Suzi, you have any last word before we go?
Well, we've just got another amazing guest coming next week. I believe we've got Luigi coming next week. So maybe we'll pair them up someday, and we'll get Luigi, David, Kathy, and we'll have a right old hoolie on here. Like, who knows?
Oh, that'd be good fun.
Yeah, nice. It'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, join in next week. And for more fascinating chats. Great chat tonight, David. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys. I've had a great time.
Thank you. And do remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss future ones. And on that note, we thank you so much. Have a pleasant morning, afternoon, or evening in your time zone.